Continuous improvement comes in lots of different flavors and styles. I'm Bella Engelbach, and I'm inviting you to journey with me to the edges of lean. Episode 102, Continuous Improvement and the Passion for Art. Kevo is a full-time artist who is a tattoo artist, painter, film and theater producer, and he's an art teacher. And he joins me here at the Edges of Lean to share his inspiring story of overcoming a troubled childhood, jail time, and even a gunshot wound to pursue his passion for art. There's a lot to consider in this conversation for all of us in the continuous improvement world. Kevo, welcome to the Edges of Lean.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here today. Kevo, please introduce yourself to my audience and tell us what it is you do today. And we all want to hear your story about how you got into doing what you're doing today, which is such a fascinating story.
Okay. As you can see, my shirt says Tattoos by Kevo. I sell a lot of my merchandise. I'm a full-time artist, and by that I mean I'm a tattoo artist. I also paint, and I also produce film and theater. And I teach art classes at the college level part-time. So every single thing I do revolves around art. When I was younger, as you know, we've talked about this. I used to draw a lot, and I was not raised by my parents. I overcame a lot to get to where I am today, and that makes the story interesting because with not being raised by my parents, I had a very troubled childhood. My mother's sister is actually the person who raised me. I spent a lot of time in and out of jail, selling drugs, and just literally from the bottom. When I graduated high school, I was sent to jail for another 9 months. And when I got out of jail, I was shot. At the time I used to box, which is crazy. And I was shot here. So I have this big scar here.
So for those of you who are listening, he's showing a big scar on his upper arm, in the back of his upper arm, kind of where the triceps is.
Yeah, that's where I was shot there, and I couldn't box again. And I'm ambidextrous, so it's kind of crazy, but I can still draw. When
you paint or draw, do you have a preferred hand?
No. There's actually videos of me online painting with both hands at the same time.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah. So after being shot and going back to jail and doing all this drug dealing stuff, one day I just thought, I don't want to say one day. The time came eventually where enough was enough. And I started to change my life for the better. And like I told you, we had a conversation about this. When I started tattooing, I wanted to be a better tattoo artist. So I went to an art school at the museum, just strictly art, because I didn't want to go to regular school. And because I wanted to learn how to paint. And they go, well, you can't just come here and take painting. You got to take composition first. You have to take drawing first. You have to take design first. And I'm like, all of this just to paint. So when you heard that, so Kevin, I mean, this is just so fascinating that you have this moment, right, where you, like you said, enough is enough. And you realize you had to change things. Yeah. And you had been, like you said, you've been drawing your whole life, but so you had that, you had that artistic bent, that talent was already there. But when you started out, did you have any idea kind of like where you were going? I mean, you didn't visualize yourself. I didn't. And I'm sorry for rushing through my story. I was trying to make it short, but it's fine. I kind of rushed through it, but when I started tattooing because when I would go get the tattoo, I would always have to correct the artist. Like, no, this is how.
Oh, okay.
No, right. This is how this is. And I would say, no, this doesn't make sense. Or this. So the artist one day that I went to the most said, why don't you just do the tattoo? But he said it in a way that like he's dead serious. Like, not I'm mad at you. He was like, I'm serious, bro. I cannot draw. He was like, I can't. He's like, you're really good, you know? So I said, okay. So he told me what to get. And I did my first tat. He came to check it out. And I had that moment that every artist has, is that this sucks. You know, everybody's saying it's good, but this is
Uh-huh.
not good.
You can see things that other people can't see, right?
Yeah. So when I went to the you got to remember, at the time I was selling dope. So
Oh my gosh.
the way that I processed things was more so, you know, I have to do this in a dangerous environment. If I mess up some of these people tattoos that I know, it's going to be a problem. Not that I'm afraid of anybody, but I was tattooing in a trap house, what we call a trap house. So it was a place that we sold drugs out of.
Uh-huh.
So,
and were you using at the time?
no, I was. I'm not a. I don't abuse drugs. I only sold them. Now, and I have this. To this day, I don't smoke or drink. So the thing was, thank you. It's different. The thing was, I was in a headspace to, how can I make this better? There's no school for tattooing. You know, they have these places you can go to a tattoo shop and learn under somebody. But I'm 20 years old at the time. I'm thinking like, all right, my life is going down a drain with selling drugs. So, you know, under the wrong mind state, I was assuming that nobody would help me because I had no refuge my whole life, it felt like. So, and this is without guidance. Again, this is without parents. This is just me thinking, okay, maybe if I learn more about art, I could, you know, be a better tattoo artist. But the funny thing is that when I was in jail, I studied art and history a lot. It was all I would read. So I was studying a lot of war philosophy because of their take on history. I was studying a lot of African American artists, and I was studying a lot of just stories about artists, which brings you to my stage play that you know I'm doing. I'm doing the Vincent stage play, but all of that studying was huge in my growth because I was a step ahead. If you fast forward the story to me going to college, when I'm at the art school, the dean calls me in and he says, you know, you really can articulate art really well. And I don't think you should be at some art school trying to get a certificate for art. And I go, okay. And basically he was kicking me out in a positive way. He's like, I'll write you a letter of recommendation. But I'd never been to college before. I knew nothing about college. He's the one who motivated me to go and get my bachelor's in fine arts. So the connection with jail and the art school is that I was studying art on my own in prison. I was already studying what we learned in our history classes about who the artists were. And that's where I had an advantage. I was able to articulate more about art when I got around artists because all they did was study the trade. I could not at first draw as well as them, but I could explain it better than them. So I immediately had a huge advantage. Over time, I would become, everywhere I went, I would always be one of the best artists, if not the best artist.
So in fact, we could just pause for a minute. I just want to draw out a connection for my folks who are doing lean thinking and continuous improvement, because I think we see this all the time. We see, and as we start to learn about how to do something like this, we see the artifact, we see the thing, we see the tools, and we think that is as you might say, the art. But the art is not just knowing how to paint art, knowing how to.
It's not. You see
only
the final
technical
result.
side, right?
You see the final result. I always tell people this about the Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles are all named after master artists: Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo. Right. What's interesting to me is that Leonardo is the most popular artist out of those four, but he made the least amount of art. And that is very interesting to me. And I say that to say that you see the art, like when you said that you see the art, and you don't really see what makes it great, right? And this is the best example I can give you. The reason why Leonardo is more popular is because he painted the Mona Lisa. Now, the Mona Lisa is mathematically sound. It's a very mathematically correct painting. But Leonardo, what he's great at is the foundation of art. All of the foundational components are in his artworks. When you look at his sketches, because he was more of an engineer or scientist than he was an artist. When you look at his sketches and his preparation and his study of anatomy, you can really see all of the mathematical principles in his artwork. And the foundation is so well composed that you probably cannot name another painting other than Mona Lisa. But with the other artists, you can name a lot of their statues, their paintings, they have so much more work. And that's just always been interesting to me, is that, the core still matter most. When I went to that art school, they said, you can't just paint. You need to learn composition. You need to learn drawing. You need to learn design. And that is Leonardo's work.
It's all of that. It's all of that. It's the foundation. It's the spirit behind it. It's the meaning. And I think what you're also saying, it's the person, right?
Oh yes, it's the engine.
What you were interested in, what you studied was who are these people? What are these people like, and how did they think?
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah, interesting. So okay, so you've moved on. You moved on from your life dealing drugs to becoming a tattoo artist because somebody said to you, "Hey, Kevo, why don't you do it? And then you moved on from the art school to college, basically because of the same message from another person.
Yes.
What did that mean to you when somebody reached out to you and said, "Hey, I actually see you. I see what you're doing"?
You know what? I've never had that at times until some of those people. This is why I repeat these stories, because they may have not known what they were telling me because I've never had any refuge or advisor, right? So, and this is no disrespect to my aunt. My aunt has always been there for me. She's actually upstairs right now. But I've never had people to say, "Hey, you should do this," in a typical way that I would say a parent would, which is why when I got to U of H, my favorite professor, her name was Gail, and everybody hated Gail. Everybody, she had some students quit the program. She would cry. And she would have some students cry. I'm sorry, I said she would cry.
Yeah.
And they would just say she's so mean. Gail came to my studio every morning and talked to me about what I'm doing wrong. And not only did she do that, if I had a question, she had an answer. And she would email me and say, "Check out this book and check out this artist." And she is the first person that I feel like cared about my artwork. So my perspective was not that I was being criticized or kicked out of art school, or that he was being mean to me when he was like, "You just do it." My perspective was that they cared. You get what I'm saying? So that meant a lot to me. Those people saying, "Hey, you should do this or you should try this," to me, that was sincerity. That was genuine care. Like, "Hey, you could do better." That's all I heard. You know what I mean? When he told me you shouldn't sell dope, bro. You should do tattoos. When he said you shouldn't be in art school, you're smarter than my teacher. He said, you're smarter than the people that are teaching you. That's what he told me. And no offense to those teachers, but he was talking about in terms of art. And he said, you don't even know this, and you know this. He didn't know I've been in prison and was reading about this type of stuff. Because I could, for example, I knew about Peter Paul Rubens, for example, and his trip to the halls and all of this stuff and his life story. And, you know, they're like, yo, where did you come from? Where did you get your degree from? You know what I mean? And I'm like, I just learned about it, you know? So me going from that, and then you got to think, when I'm skipping over and saying, oh, I went to college. Nah, I had to go relearn algebra. I had to go, that was hard. I had to go write papers. I had to go from selling dope to changing my entire identity. You know what I mean? So
how did that like work for you on a day-to-day basis? You know, one of the things that we see, you know, in the work that we do and in continuous improvement is that people sometimes like have an idea of what they want to do, and the first time they go to try to do it, it doesn't work, right? And then it feels like
it's not going
right?
to work, more than likely.
Yeah.
So
it's not going to work, most likely. Yeah. I love that. It's not going to work, most likely.
Yeah, but you have to fight through it, because the moment you start to change, the people around you either have to change as well, or you have to change the people, because your whole identity is about who you were. But that's what makes it so hard. That's why they call it a 180 instead of a 360. Your whole identity, if I'm hanging around drug dealers, they can tell me who Frank Lucas is. They cannot help me understand the life of Pablo Picasso. It would take them a million years. So as I started to change, I had to stop hanging around these people. And this is hard for some people, because you have emotional bond, you have emotional connection with people who actually ultimately harm you in life. But either they gotta go or you gotta go. So you have to choose yourself. Now, not only do I have to change who I'm hanging around, I gotta change myself, and I have to adapt to these other people, because it's almost like now I have to fit into a new crowd. So from my perspective, I have to fit in over here. And from my friend's perspective, either, oh man, he's proving, or, oh man, look, he ain't with us no more. He don't want to hang with us no more. The ones that said, man, I see you improving, we're still friends to this day.
And the other ones you had to leave behind.
Yeah, they still in the same corner, more than likely, chilling.
Wow. So there's a lot. I think there's a lot for other people to draw there, right? And what you said is so important. And when you start to change, right, other people have kind of adjusted to the way you are, right? Are you fitting into? And this might be in a work situation or home situation. Other people are kind of they've molded themselves around who you are, the kind of the shape you are. What you're saying is, as you start to change, that's going to impact other people, right? And that is really important. Like, I think if we're thinking about that, for example, doing improvement at work, that once you start to change how you behave as as an employee, as a leader, as a manager, as a teacher, other people are going to have to change as well.
Definitely.
Right? It's not just about you. And sometimes you're going to have some impact of that.
Yeah, it's
going to be positive or negative.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what are you doing today? You're telling us you have so much going on. So I want to hear what you're doing today.
So again, I'm a full-time artist. So everything is a part-time job. I tattoo part-time, I teach part-time, I paint part-time, I sell my merchandise on my website. Everything is there. So you get to see everything. You can book a tattoo, you can buy a shirt, you can buy a mug. or you can see my next production, which is my biggest thing I'm doing today is I'm doing a stage play, a world premiere on Christmas Eve about Vincent van Gogh. And I'm going to be playing Van Gogh. The perspective that the play is done, as a playwright, writing is still art for me. So yes, I can write a play.
Yeah, writing's definitely art. I
so
definitely agree with
the
that.
perspective is that Vincent's family and friends are talking about his life as a theatrical play. So the format is they're not talking, they're talking to each other, but they're talking to the audience about Vincent's life, but he's there in spirit. So the entire play, I'm painting Starry Night. I'm painting his most famous painting while they're talking. So that's my next big deal. And this is something that I would like to, I'm looking forward to traveling. I'm doing it one time here in Houston for the first time. And then I'm going to try to see where I can take it from there, because it's
that would be December 24th, 2023.
Yes, ma'am.
In Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And so you as you said, writing is art. So and then you're also producing this play, right? So
yeah.
So you're involved in finding the cast and
I'm in directing and everything. And I wouldn't have never so my first art form, well, drawing was first, but my first art form that I learned that I was in school for was theater, because in high school I was in theater, and before that I was in theater. But I'm saying that to say, who can say that? I don't think there's anyone that knows me personally that will be thinking, oh man, you will be doing a play about Vincent van Gogh that you wrote one day, from a child, right? So who's to say that had I not made that change, would I know the person that I am today? You never know your potential. I couldn't be more proud of myself.
Wow. And so it's really interesting to me, Kevo, the way you're talking about this, because you're saying, you never know your potential. And I think that sometimes what we do as human beings is we imagine what we want to do. We set goals for ourselves, right? You set a goal for yourself to be a tattoo artist.
Blindly. You have to be, it's weird because everybody gives this advice that I always hear. You got to be able to see it. You got to be able to manifest it. I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that half of it is true. I think you have to be able to believe that you can see it. I'll say that. You have to be able to believe that you can see it, but you have to, because you can definitely see the negative. And if you work so hard to change something for the positive, you have to be able to see the negative and be like, I know what that road gets me, and I can lose everything I'm working for, which I don't know where this is going to get me, but I trust and believe that this is better. I could lose all of this if I go back down that path, or if I continue down this path. I think that it's unknown. I think that's a better way to look at it. Like it's a leap of faith. I really believe that.
Like and where the goal that you set for yourself, whatever it is, the journey to gaining that goal may take you somewhere else, right? It may take you somewhere better, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna develop some skills along the way, some friends, some companions, some some knowledge that's going to take you to a place that you didn't even imagine, right? That's I was just thinking something a friend told me the other day. So I have a friend who had just did a bucket list trip to go hiking in Yosemite with another friend of his, a mutual friend. And so they planned this for a long time. They had a really fantastic trip hiking in Yosemite. Truly trip of a lifetime. Well, they came back, and the weekend after they came back, they decided to instead of walking their favorite trail back here in Pennsylvania, they decided to run it. And they found that they could run that whole trail. And it was hot here, not as hot as Houston, but it was hot here. They were able to run that whole trail, which was not something they had expected as an outcome of, this bucket list trip to Yosemite. But what they had gained in that trip was something that they didn't even imagine.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. The Vincent play. I wrote a song about Vincent, and I work out a lot, and I was challenging myself to finish this run, and in a certain amount of time. And for a couple of weeks, I kept getting closer and closer to my time, but I just didn't get it. And the day that I finished in the amount of time that I wanted to finish is the day that I thought of the song that I would write the play. So in a way, it kind of associates with what you said. Like, you never know what you're going to get when you have a plan and then something just happens. But I remember being the last part, which is the hardest part of it's a straightaway. It's like I think it's pretty long. But I was like, okay, I have this much more time to finish this. And immediately when I said that, the song just clicked in my head, and it sped me up just a little bit more. And I was like, oh yeah, I gotta write this down when I get in the car. And I was tired, but yeah, I stumbled across that while I was going for a run.
But if you sat down to write the song, it might not happen, right?
Yeah, it probably wouldn't have, but it pushed me. I'm talking, it was weeks. It was 3 weeks, and I finally got it 1 week, and I was like, yes, I finally did it under this time frame. And right at the end, what happened was, the first week I would stop running at certain points because I work out, but running is a different, and I had a cardio for it. So I would calculate, okay, I stopped right here and I walked the rest of the way. So now I got to run further. And then on the last time, before I actually finished, I said, I think if I can just do this straight away at the end, I'll be fine. And that's the time that I got. I said, okay, I'm at the straightaway. You can't stop because you're not going to finish in time. And right when I was hitting that corner, I thought of it. Oh, that's the song that I should put in there. And it just came to me.
So you're not just a playwright, an artist, a tattoo artist, an author. You also write songs.
Every play that I have, there's a song I wrote. So which is interesting because I was when I was selling drugs, I studied. I told you I was studying art. So in studying art, you study music. You come across it, which is a lot of people don't really know that about art school. Is that art school? You study all forms of art. You don't just study what you do. So for example, they will tell you need this many credits of art, but this many have to be in what you're doing. So let's say, for example, you need 60 in painting, but you need 30 in art. So a lot of times you can get credit for learning music, for learning theater, you can get credit for, different forms of art.
Kevo, you've traveled to Europe. You've studied in Europe. You've talked a lot about European artists. I'd love to hear you talk about African American artists other than yourself.
Yeah, well, I feel like I have as far as our African American artists, I feel like I have the most interesting story. I want to write a play about Basquiat because I think his story is interesting. But I'm more. I'll say this: I'm a pro-Black person, but that does not mean that I don't appreciate other nationalities, genders, races, or anything else. I have a very diverse brain because there has been times in my life where there wasn't a Black man or a Black woman who have helped me, so I don't have a issue with showing an affinity to this art. But in terms of African American artists, the one who has the most influence on my life was Michael Ray Charles. I did a project on him when I was at the art school, and after that project, what I wrote about him is when the dean was like, yo, this paper is long. That's what he said. He said, this is not a college. You don't have to write papers this long. And he was like, it's very impressive. I think you should go to college. I went to U of H because Michael Ray Charles was teaching there. And he's an African-American artist. And when I took his class, he's famous. So he barely was there. He was barely available, so I learned a hard lesson. Like, you're not going to get what you think you're going to get. But he was very helpful. He was still very helpful. And he was serious about content. I just remember his words. He was very serious about what I was delivering. And he was going to come to my last play, but he didn't make it. But again, it's just has been, for whatever reason in history, we have a lot of historical issues in terms of racism and in terms of systematic oppression that African Americans have not been involved in these type of arts other than the Harlem Renaissance. And there are great African American artists, don't get me wrong. But the Harlem Renaissance, there was just more. It was a lot more being developed. But other than that, my African American artists that I love are typically not in painting or drawing. It's Prince, it's Michael Jackson, it's Lorraine Hansberry, it's James Baldwin. It's people like that. They're more on an intellectual side or entertainment side because of their prestige or their work ethic. Versus a painter, I think of more Italians and Dutch or French, or I love French artists, So that's why I probably don't really bring them up, because even with Basquiat, like, I'm not a fan of his art. I'm not really a big fan of his art or his life, compared to his contemporaries, which would be Andy Warhol. And Andy Warhol is a gay male that printed artwork. He was a printmaker, and he tried to outwork Picasso, which is a huge feat because Picasso is known as the hardest working artist ever. So Andy Warhol built this factory, and he just had this idea about marketing. And it's just, his female friend shot him. And it's just a lot more interesting than a Basquiat story for me, who the highlight of Basquiat's story would be he tried to rape his little cousin. He got kicked out of his house. He chose to be homeless, and he overdosed on heroin and fentanyl. So, that's crazy. But when it comes to African Americans, I tend to take a more respectable route. I tend to be, I appreciate Baldwin or Lorraine Hansberry or Michael Ray Charles, or, I appreciate Reginald Lewis, even though he's not an artist.
Yeah. Well, all the people you're talking about are people who really, whatever their art is, they put a lot of time and effort and education into
as he did too,
right.
But his was more about conspiracy almost. His art was more, Basquiat was more about conspiracies.
Wow. Your website, Kevo, is
artbykevo.com.
artbykevo.com, and you have some really beautiful work on there. Tell us about, how would you define your art? You have some prints on there that are just gorgeous.
I have some. I thought I took the prints down because I wanted to. I put the artwork on my merchandise, and I wanted to focus on selling the shirts and stuff, because I like how my art looks on shirts and shorts and hoodies and mugs and bags and pillows. I love how that looks. So my art is based on social experiences, human experiences, humanity, racial dynamics, and anything that has, how can I say this, a social, I don't want to call it an issue, but a social phenomenon. So, for example, the painting that I did in Germany is called Mercury Retrograde. A lot of people are big in astrology and believe that the Mercury retrograde is an astrological event that affects human beings emotionally and affects our communication. And a lot of people during the Mercury retrograde, during that time, they feel a lot of depression or awakening, either or, and they make a lot of changes in their life. And this phenomenon has always been so interesting to me. So I decided to paint this. What is it? It's 90 inches. It's huge. It's like 8 feet painting, 9 feet painting, 8 or 9 feet painting, and it's called the Mercury retrograde. I started in Germany and I flew it back out here and I finished it here in America. And I honestly, for me, I know you asked me to talk about my art, but the Germany trip, for me, it cleared up so much that I thought I knew about the world and war, and it showed me that how behind America was with social issues, because the Germans and the Jews, that Holocaust, it's forgiven. The reparations are there. The people are pro-peace. The history is everywhere. It's almost like
the
their
history
society
is required, right? People have to learn the history. They must learn the history.
And in America, a lot of our bad history gets washed or watered down or deleted. And I think that had a huge impact on me because it gave me a sense of, don't be so closed-minded to power, and how people in power really, really play the cards. For example, if you're a baby right now, you're just a little baby, you have no idea about slavery or the Holocaust, and who is in power as a little baby is more than likely the mother and the father, So it put me in a sense of, wow, you really have to educate your children about the harsh realities of life, because the people in power, you cannot expect them to show them the biggest threat to humanity, which is hate.
Did you visit concentration camps?
I visited everything I could. It was horrible. And what was also interesting to me was, and I'm telling you, I asked people this because I stuck out. I'm Black, walking around Germany. It was not a lot of Black people there. I think I saw 3 Black people. I asked people about if they can compare it to slavery. And not one person said that the Holocaust was worse. And that was very interesting to me, that you made this such a big deal and you feel like slavery was worse, because they shed light on the idea that, I remember it was an older woman. She told me, what, and maybe they're just telling me this just to make me feel better because I'm Black, maybe, I don't know. But I asked a few people, and I'm very, very communicative. But what this one lady said stuck out the most. She said that you cannot take centuries of something and have an effect on people and belittle it and compare it to a world war where someone treated a nationality so harsh that it affected them. And she said, what makes it worse is that Germany gave reparations. Germany apologized. Germany, educated the future about this. And she said, from what they know, America just freed the slaves.
Yeah, and then there was Jim Crow, right? So I mean, so it was sharecropping and
sharecropping and Jim Crow, which is in my last play, and I love educational stuff, and I really had to put that in my play because I made it after the Civil Rights Movement, because I felt like, even being African American, I feel like African Americans don't understand Jim Crow. I think they just hear the words and just like, oh, it's just the name Jim Crow, and it's like, nah, it was horrible, So So I think, you know, to bring this full circle and to not take too much time on this, I think slavery gets brushed over and the Holocaust doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what happens.
Yeah, and slavery was generational. I think that's
definitely.
I think that's the other thing that people like really don't understand, because I'm hearing a lot of people, especially this week, the week that we're recording this, talking about, so enslaved people were freed, and the whole thing about gaining additional skills, which was, I don't even want to say what ridiculous thing that is to say, but you're talking about, when you say that, you're talking about one generation, right?
Yeah.
And not all enslaved people were actually freed. I mean, it's just so much nuance is lost.
Yeah.
And
you were just born into the world at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
When you're driving around Germany, you could be driving and you say, oh, a McDonald's. Oh, a Starbucks. Oh, a graveyard. You know, it just hits you. You know, like, boom. Oh, a concentration camp. You'll just be driving and it's still there. That's what was a big deal to me. I was like, yo. And you would stop and read it and you're like, man, this is kind of messed up. But you feel, you get, it gives you a sense of humanity. It gives you a sense of care. Like, you don't get that in America. Even on the news, the perception of African Americans, especially when I was younger, was always bad. They never talked about a Neil deGrasse Tyson or Reginald Lewis on the news when I was younger. It was always bad. It was always negative, or it was always entertainment. And it's just the perception that power can do, you know, and you could take the word power lightly because it could be also media, you know. And also you can't speak for everybody. I get it. And there's ratings and there's capitalism, but it is what it is.
But all of this informs what you do, right, Kevo? It informs your art, your visual art, your plays, your songs, and everything that you do.
Definitely.
Kevo, tell us your website one more time.
artbykevo.com.
artbykevo.com. So everybody go and check it out, especially before he takes the prints down, because I want you to see the beautiful art. The one I love, Kevo, is I think it's a woman. I'm not sure if it's a woman with
In My Feelings,
hands folded and the flowers.
In My Feelings. Oh, a woman hands folded. Oh, no. A woman. Wait. No.
I should remember the name. It was something.
It's okay. It's okay. Eternally blooming.
Well, like her head is blooming.
Eternally blooming.
Blooming. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that one.
All right, Kevo, we've covered a lot of ground here. Your journey from dealing drugs to everything that you're doing today, and I want to wish you all the best, especially with that Christmas Eve premiere. That sounds really exciting, and I hope some folks in Houston listen to this and check out, come and support you with that. But I would like to ask you, what would be your piece of advice for a young person starting out? We talked about that baby starting out. What would be your one piece of advice once they get a little bit older, right? And they can listen to some advice.
It would be that life is hard for everybody. And when you hit an area where you really want to change, it's going to take a lot of accountability. You cannot really blame your surroundings or your history or your condition on everybody else and sit in that negativity. You have to take some accountability. You have to look at yourself and make a decision and not look back. There was one thought in particular that I used to think, and I actually learned this from Tupac. He said, somebody has to explain to me why I don't have anything. And when I was younger, I used to think about that quote all the time. Like, man, why don't we have this? Why do we get heirlooms? Why are we poor? Why do we get food stamps? Why? And I remember one day thinking, man, you sound weak. You know, you don't have it because you didn't go and get it. You didn't put any initiative. So what happens if I try? And those type of thoughts, that shifting of my mentality that everybody talks about, changing your mentality, helped me far more than sulking in the negative. So take some accountability for what you can control, would be my advice.
Take some accountability for what you can control. That is excellent advice for everybody. Yeah. Hey, Kevo, thank you. I have enjoyed this conversation so much, and I really appreciate you traveling with me to the edges of lean.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me.
This is Bella Engelbach, and I'd like to thank Kevo for being my guest at the Edges of Lean. What did you learn from this conversation? What ideas did it spark? We would love to hear from you. Find Kevo at artbykevo.com. Find me on LinkedIn or at leanforhumans.com, or comment wherever you watch or listen. And check out my friends in the Lean Communicators community at leancommunicators.com, where you will find lots of great new content every week. The Edges of Lean is written and produced by Bella Engelbach with support from Podcast Inc. This is a Lean for Humans production.